Most people have had an experience they could not explain and never actually told anyone about. Something in a dream that came true. Something in the sky that they could not place. A moment where the boundaries between what is real and what is not got genuinely unclear. And then they just put it away because the culture, their family, their friends gave them no framework to hold it. That gap is exactly what this conversation is about. Today, I'm sitting down with Collin Conkwright, scholar, writer, Freemason, and the host of the great YouTube channel American Esoteric, and the author now of his first book, The Universalist. We got into the philosophical foundations first, the Nominalists' universal principles as merely concepts. The Universalist understands them as actual realities. And that distinction changes everything about how you approach the evidence. From there, we get into the experiential origins of religious belief, what Iamblichus and Synesius understood about divine dreaming, out-of-body experiences, crisis apparitions, synchronicities, UAPs, and the soul surviving physical death. And the question running underneath all of it: what happens when you stop dismissing these experiences and start taking them seriously as evidence of something else? Colin is one of the sharper minds, I would say, one of the sharpest minds working in this space. His video essays on American Esoteric set a standard for how to take difficult thinkers seriously without flattening them, and The Universalist is the product of that very same sustained work. If you're drawn to these conversations that go beneath the surface, into myth, into magic, and into the esoteric traditions, as well as science fiction, fantasy, and how fiction is bleeding into reality. And, the questions that mainstream culture doesn't know how to hold. Subscribe and stay close. Like the video and share it with someone who is ready for it. This is MagusintheMedia. Now, let's get into it. Welcome back, everyone, to MagusintheMedia, and today I have the great Collin Conkwright of American Esoteric hanging out with us to truly give us a great exposition, a deep dive into the great work that he has finally been able to put out into the world, and what a great, great work that is. It is going to help lay us the foundation of something that I think is truly missing from not only the Western esoteric spheres, but from just the world, to help us understand really what is the backbone of the essences, the structures, and what are we truly doing with all this fantastic information out there in the world. It's called The Universalist. It's his first book. This man is more than just a single individual. He is taking upon a lineage, a tradition. Yes, he's a Freemason. Yes, he's a scholar. Yes, he's a writer. But he's also a gentleman in that. And now he has done it. The Universalist is something that I think everyone should go out and get. We'll put a link in the bio so everyone can make sure that they click on that and go to Amazon or wherever it is that Colin truly wants us to go. Purchase this book from him. He's got a Substack. This man is a man of many hats. And I truly think that he is out here to help us understand those things that may be hard and may be going bump in the night. Thank you, Colin, for joining us. How are you doing today?
Brandon, thank you for the introduction. I'm doing well, and I'm looking forward to another great conversation. Yes. And I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. Life is rolling along. We're feeling positive about things, and things are getting crazy out there in the world, but I just think that makes it all more exciting.
Yeah, we get along very well, especially in that avenue. The crazier it gets, I think, the more exciting it gets, and we just roll with the punches. That's exactly it. And I think that's something that truly you speak about in this book, which I find very exciting. Is you kind of started off doing something that most people don't want to touch on, is not only your personal experience, but it also has to do with the UAP, UFO phenomena, the supernatural, as well as the mystical experience. And I think that's really important because I think when it comes to this universalism versus the nominal or the scientific materialist, you're helping us lay the foundation for the substance of the work. And so can you help me understand why did you open up the book with those chapters?
Yeah, it wasn't necessarily an easy decision. It was like in the later stage of the development, I decided, well, it would be a more accurate and honest kind of survey of what has led to the book to provide my own experiences, because without them, I wouldn't have gotten as interested in this whole space as I was, So, when you have, at least for me, having out of body experiences, a lot of wild synchronicities, psychic phenomena, things that shine in the sky and in the woods at night, and sometimes during the day. All of these things were occurring kind of in tandem with my own quest for truth, a personal quest for truth. And of course, I would meet a lot of friends, and still have a lot of friends who were on their own journeys at the same time, having their own experiences from various different traditions. And I was fortunate enough to kind of escape the dogmatic and institutionalized religious route. And I'm clinically like independent. I can, honestly, possibly to a fault, I just can't stand an authority sort of breathing over my shoulder telling me how to think and how to do things. I'd rather just go figure it out myself and fail, fail at first into that process, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean,
I love
I
that.
I was super super curious, like many of us, and lo and behold, a lot of the ancient sources and some of the great religious thinkers and spiritual leaders of the past have also had their own seeking and their own quests, and they have found their own answers as well, which align across all of human experiences, right? So it still is a joy to be able to pry open these sources from across cultures. Doesn't even matter what time they're in, and doesn't always matter what culture they're in. There's a lot of these thematic universals that come to a head immediately, and these are like universal principles, practices, and phenomena. So it is both the things that human beings have kind of artificially constructed with theology. And part of the points that I'm trying to make with my work is that it's not just people having these lofty opinions and abstracting without any kind of origin in an experience, right? So, what I've tried to add to the conversation, as far as where did this particular ritual or this particular spiritual practice come from? We're always trying to find these physical links in these chains. And one thing that gets missed when you're doing that, well, first of all, it's like if you keep going back on the chain, you're just going to have to keep going back. And what does it really matter if you figure out that the Orphic mysteries actually came from Egypt, or if they're in Thrace? It's
Mm.
kind of a historical low stakes like amusement,
Mm.
rather than this high stakes fundamental thing
Yeah.
where a real seeker is sort of trying to figure out the high stakes aspects, which, let's say, high stakes is surviving physical death. That's as high stakes as it gets. So in that regard, the quest for the soul, and obtaining good data and good evidence for that, is more of a high stakes quest, rather than trying to figure out who first created the opinion of a soul. It's really more like the shaman was leaving his body, or someone had a near death experience, or someone during a mystery ritual or during some kind of ceremony had a profound experience, a unification with the divine love and light, encountered some spiritual beings, and so on. So there's a lot of these thematic similarities that happen during these experiences that then immediately affect the religious purview of the cultures that they're in. So it's not betraying the uniqueness of a culture to take this universalistic route. I would say it's actually honoring cultures, because we're not going in and actually doing the thing that universalists get accused of, colonizing. We're not the ones that are going in and saying, no, we shouldn't listen to these people about their experiences. Really, they just hallucinated it all, which would be
Yeah.
the kind of default, one of the default choices of the kind of scientific reductionist worldview there. I think we just need to listen to what they tell us. And a lot of the times, what they're telling us, kind of solving part of the mystery of the origins of religious beliefs here is that these people are having direct experiences, and that is why they're drawing their conclusions. That's why they're able to come around and say, no, I know this. I know this happened because I was above my body and I saw that the army was coming across the hill and I was able to warn my people and get them out of danger. Another high stakes situation, right? So when things happen and the stakes are high, that those things sit with us more so than just a good story or some feel good speculation. So that's kind of that experiential origin point was part of the real impetus for this work, and I'm going to continue to open up that can of worms for quite a while.
Yeah, that's a good. I mean, that's a great can of worms because I feel like it's never ending. So I think you laid down some really good points there. Is that instead of something like the scientific reductionist or even this spiritual reductionist who do like to, I think it's important for one aspect to, yes, figure out our histories and go back, but we get caught in this lineality, which is what we're trying to not do within our own actual practice itself. And as we're studying these things, we're trying not to just have this linear line of where our history comes from, but it's to go more within or dig into the true substance of things, which is what Plato was doing, or any of these characters through our histories were doing, or the shamans, or the aboriginals, or the small-time esotericists and their little groups and here and there. And so I think that's foundational. I think that's fantastic. And so it's also doing this thing with like the universalist, universalism versus nominalist, right? The nominalist thinks that the universal principles are just mere concepts. And instead, the universalist understands that they're not that. So it's like what you're laying down is that through these experiences, the mystical experiences, the strange lights, the UAPs, the supernatural, the things that happen in our dreams, those things are actually really happening. And so universalists or universalism can be called a realist because we view these concepts, myself included, as reality, as real. And so now what we can do, instead of having this linear time frame going back, now we can dig underneath into that can of worms that you're speaking of and get to the pure substance of things. Does that sound about right?
Yes, and it essentially, I don't think we need to put all of the spiritual principles and practices and phenomena in like this separate category, but we can regard them as the practical phenomena of nature itself, because no one would deny that the sun is a concept or that the grass is a concept
Right.
or that dreams are just a fabric of the cultural imagination. Every human being dreams. Maybe they don't always remember, etc. But dreams is a great example here because it is an experience. It is extremely bizarre, and there's a spectrum of kind of degrees of bizarreness to these dreams.
Yeah. Yeah.
And one or another different kind of phenomena can come in and happen in the dream. You can have this premonition that sort of comes true, and you can interact with other beings that you've never seen before in waking life, and they might give you an instruction. There's a lot of dream phenomena where a family member will come through pleading for help in the dream, and lo and behold, they might have died that hour or had an accident that hour, right? So if we just were to, select dreams and dig in, we can realize, well, it's cross-cultural. It doesn't matter the language that you speak. It's universal, okay? It's not particular. Where the particular comes in is when different cultures have different methods of interpreting the dreams, because a lot of dreams are extremely symbolic and we don't know what's going on. I like to focus on dreams that the meaning is inherent. It is like, not only intuitively, but maybe there's something in there that's giving you an exact meaning of these dreams. Those are ones we should focus on. And of course, there's a lot of sources from varying cultures that tell us that dreams come through, one gate where there's more falsehood, more symbolic, more chaos. And then there's the divine dreams. And these divine dreams are the ones we should focus on. Iamblichus and Synesius, helped develop that in the kind of later Platonic tradition and so on. So that would just be one example. And, I offer just initially 17 of these kind of examples. And, they can either be principles that are established, which are a little more abstract, and like, let's say, for instance, the principle of a supreme being or the first principle deity in many different pantheons. Well, the monotheist and the polytheist kind of semantical debate, they might tangle us up in a mess to try to solidify this principle. But meanwhile, the monotheist, the polytheist, the pantheist, the henotheist, all these different isms still posit some kind of creative deity that is usually a unity. Sometimes it's so transcendent and we need not even discuss it because this deity will never descend. It would never deign to, be a personal God for us.
Right.
And then sometimes the deity is permeating every single atom of existence and it can be interacted with at that, the smallest, most fundamental levels of our daily life, right? But in one or another way, there's this first principle being. And so it's like, how is that established with an experiential component? Well, we could say that when people have these profound experiences, especially ones where your ego is dissolved into a greater intelligence that is it's so all encompassing that language will always fail, right, to describe it. And you see that ineffability aspect coming into play when the great mystics and philosophers, sometimes relatively elite, are describing this first principle deity. They are saying that they are very apophatic with it. They're saying that nothing we can ever really say can actually, convey this through language, but we're going to try anyway, right?
Yeah.
And so we can keep moving down from the most abstract, most all-encompassing kind of principles, and then we can get into practices like prayer and so on, sacrifices and offerings. Even a magical practice, and all of the magic would also imply the experience, not only the experiences of like the ritualist doing the ritual or doing the imagination, doing the practice, but then the results. And the idea is that without some kind of experiential result in that practice, why would people everywhere continue to do it in their own little ways?
Mm.
There has to be, and there usually are, stories of actual results, tangible or visionary or so on, even coming out in the dream and giving someone an answer that they were looking for, right?
Yeah.
So, there's a lot of these levels to it that I just don't think we can sit around anymore and pretend that that they're all just speculations and that there are no common threads here. And while I think tracking down kind of the physical lineages of some of these movements is important, and there's good evidence and good work there. I mean, the Eastern Mediterranean, obviously, these people were trading and connecting with each other
Yeah.
for thousands of years. So there's going to be, you're going to have Phoenicians bringing over some concept of God to the Greeks, and
Oh,
they
yeah.
were talking to the Egyptians over there doing their incense deals. So there's going to be that syncretism there.
Oh,
But
yeah.
lo and behold, even in the most syncretic cultures, we have records of individuals, without all of these syncretisms already established in their own doctrines, having
Right.
experiences that lead
Yeah.
them to believe and preach and practice things
Oh, yeah.
that are once again quite universal. So I find this actually, even though it's kind of a nuanced discussion right now, I think it's pretty elementary to observe this stuff. And I just think we sort of just need to hack down all of the semantic fiddle faddle of academia who are not approaching this from that experiential level. If anything, they're trying to reduce and figure out every way in which these things can't be discussed as actually having some kind of experiential reality to them. Whereas on the practitioner side and the more what I think is a spiritual realism approach, there's no longer any doubt that these things are happening, and that if you see a ghost in your bedroom or something like this, or if you encounter something phenomenal that has this very exalted kind of emotional response that it brings out of you, things can change, and there's going to be a lot more question marks about reality that you have. And if you're going to go to the authorities that tell you, well, in fact, this didn't happen to you, and they have no insight on the experience or on anything, and they're kind of dismissive anyway, they're not going to provide much value other than just trying to figure out why something isn't what apparently it actually is in the experience, right? So
Yeah.
this is kind of the dance that needs to be done, and I think focusing on the fundamentals is it's picking up another tool in our kit to grab onto and approach this whole mystery from, because it's like we're dealing with a lot of unknowns here, and there's hubris on both extremes, whether it be like religious dogmatism. Even
Oh yeah.
esotericists have a lot
Oh
of
yeah.
dogmas with
A
this,
lot.
and a lot of esotericists don't want to accept that some random Joe Schmo down the street can have some profound experience. But the soul is universal. There's not going to be some human community that suddenly lacks all of the parameters that overarch on all of our ontology to begin with, right? So it's about having a more practical discussion about this and not getting lost in these little specialized fields that were clearly created by people often after they have profound experiences, right? So
Yeah.
so yes.
No, that's fantastic, and I think that that last little bit that you're talking about is brilliant, especially because that's something that I'm continually trying. And you and I talked about it before in our last in our last conversation about how a lot of times the esoteric dogmatist, the institution tends to want to gatekeep initiation or gatekeep certain kinds of experiences, and because we all want to formulate ourselves in our own little groups. It's all like, come over to my side. This is the pathway. It's the greatest system. This, and that. But we forget that it is those, like you wrote about in the very beginning, it is the experiences walking through a forest where all of a sudden we experience something that we didn't quite understand, a dream that captured our emotions, and we woke up and it felt like a little more than just the collection of data from the day before, to something that happened while we were in a car crash, to our meditation, to it's the individual trying to understand the soul in the world that is the true universal initiation, instead of something that is within a temple lodge or in these types of things. So I completely agree. Not that that's not important, which I think it is in its own right for the individual who's trying to just understand. But yeah, I love that. And I think it's also really important for everyone to know this idea of even what a universal is, in composed to what more the scientific materialist and how they see the world, and or even the dogmatic religious individuals. So can you give us a nice little breakdown of your take on the universal, like what that, just define that first, and we're going to build off of that.
Yeah. So, a universal existent, a universal object is, I mean, the human hand. There's not human beings that we know of that lack the same geometry of the human hand, the human anatomy, and so on. And then out here in the physical world. So, in a lot of the great mystical and theological systems, the sun, and even in ancient Egypt, the sun served probably the best idea of a universal phenomena that is shining its light unconditionally in all directions, right? And some of the earliest kind of monotheistic hymns and inscriptions that we find in Egypt are praising the sun for this kind of universalistic aspect. And their deities for the sun weren't just simple deities in Egypt. They applied universally to foreign peoples as well. So in a lot of these more, let's say, archaic systems, it was recognized that our gods, though we ascribe them our own particular names that work for us, that might have their own kind of history here, they are universal. They apply everywhere else. And that's why some of our great earliest Greek writers, Herodotus especially, was immediately giving this kind of comparative analysis of things. Maybe the Greeks got their gods from here, et cetera, et cetera. So the sun is the perfect universal principle that it cannot be denied. It shines on everyone. It applies to our life, and without it, we simply wouldn't be here, right? And you're never going to escape that. So I'm simply saying that the soul, psychic phenomena, all of these things that are actually better data points to lead toward the more broad spiritual conclusions that, hey, we do live in a spiritual reality. All of the best evidences that we have are universal. They're not isolated somewhere specifically. Okay, so this is where, as you pointed out, this kind of universalism appeals more to people truly on a quest for capital T, the truth, even though like we can, of course, never bring that down to this earth experience. You know, as the sphere of the known increases, the sphere of the unknown exponentially increases. It
Yeah,
doesn't even
nice.
shrink. Yeah. So it's like, and
Yeah.
that's how I hope it is. That's infinity right there. It's just,
Yeah.
it's this ongoing thing, you know, the more
Yeah.
we know, the less we know. It's, you know,
Yeah.
which, yeah,
I like that.
don't feel defeated by it. It's actually great. It's actually a big blessing.
Yeah.
So, you know, instead of approaching it like a socio-cultural study of some specific area somewhere, which is naturally going to cling on to those differences and those unique aspects that are definitely particular to the culture. But things being particular to cultures and things being particular to individuals is universal. You can't escape.
Right.
Universals sit up here like the sun. You simply can't escape them, right? You
Yeah.
can't,
Yeah.
there's no way around it. So I think universalism has been captured by its critics, who are usually creating a universalism where it doesn't even actually exist, where the people aren't calling themselves universalists. They're not really taking this and trying to extrapolate on what it means. They're talking more about like a social universalism, which sort of pretends all of the cultures of the world can get together and like there's no differences at all. We can all be friends. Which I don't really think that anyone seriously worth their salt is actually trying to say here. So that's why there's this crossover between universalism and perennialism. The difference would be like universalism is taking a more sweeping approach, and it's saying that there are these established universal elements like prayer, like sacrifices and offerings, like the idea of the soul existing, you know, after physical death and so on. Those aren't merely perennial, as in they crop up here or there across time. I really do think that these are always, they're always within the living religions that, you know, we study, that we have records of, right? And there's a lot we don't have records of. I mean, we don't have records of the vast majority of these experiences and these traditions of the ancient world. We have like far, far less than 1%. And even in that teeny little percentile, we're going to find these thematic elements coming down through the record of history. And so I think we should focus on them a little bit more. And this is not to say like universalism isn't a religion. It is simply an orientation. So, you know, universalism, however, might be a good thing to discuss with someone who is searching for a tradition that works for them, because it's not going to say that this sect is the best and that's the one that you should go to. It's saying, look, there are all these sects. Here's what they believe. There's naturally going to be these fundamentals. You know, you're not alone. Humans have been wrestling with these things since all time, and here's the evidence for that. Find what excites you. You know, find what stirs something in you that some other tradition can't. That means that's what the universalistic kind of approach can say. It says, look, there's something that's unique to you, that's particular to you, but there's a whole range of things that you can explore that's not up to anybody else. Like that's part of your journey, and you know, no authority can really mediate between you and the spiritual reality. You are already living in it, you know. And here's a lot of great material that testifies to this, and here's a lot of the best data that points to this, right? So I think that is kind of a crucial thing to be able to discuss at the scholarly level, at the more casual level in this day and age.
No, that's beautiful. And I think what you're truly doing, Colin, is you're tapping into something that I think is so pivotal in our lifetime, and that is bringing philosophy back into the world, because it is you're tapping into your own philosopher king. You know that is what you're doing with this is like you're laying down the philosophy not of Colin, you know, not of American Esoteric, but you're tapping into like this is the philosophy of human nature itself. What is reality? What is being? What is the ontology? Like why do we study who we are in this world? And it's trying to understand our meaning, trying to understand what it means to be these things instead of just a cog in a machine, but tapping into that we are all connected to some kind of I think I don't like the term higher principle, but that's kind of what we're getting at here, is that there's these higher principalities of humanness that when we move away from the being small b into this big B ontological being, then we can see what Plato was doing with his understanding of let's get out of the cave, let's get out of worshiping these shadows on a wall. These shadows on the walls are the particulars that the machine wants us, or the demos, the demagogues want us to focus on. And once we can get out of that cave and see the sun, and now we can have it shine upon us, and it can unconceal the remembrance of our birthright as humans. And I think this is why books like this are so important for humanity, for the individual, for the world, is because it's trying to pinpoint that exact urge, that exact experience that we have as individuals walking through a forest as we see something we don't understand. We don't have to conceptualize it. We don't have to pinpoint it. We don't have to say, well, that was just a rock, or that's a tree as it blows in the wind. We can have that's like taking it outside of the actual experience, and now we can understand that there's something more to that, and then we can take that and we can go back and we can try to expand upon it. And that I think that's beautiful, and that's something that again is missing in our world. And so I'll just commend you. Thank you for tapping into the philosopher's work, and I think that's so important. Yeah, that's beautiful. So when you were writing this book, and this is something this has been a long time coming, correctly? You've been working on this piece for quite some time.
Yeah, I mean, specifically for probably 2 years, but all of the research and stuff has been over 12 years coming now. So all of it has led to this kind of thing, and there's of course so much left over from this. So there's probably going to be 2 other similar size kind of volumes in the years to come from all of this. Yes, yeah,
yeah,
man, and it of course, like, because I was trying to understand, for my own part, selfishly understand what the heck happened to me, and does anyone else know? Has this happened to anyone else? And then sure enough, like, yes, it has. It's been happening forever. We just live in this kind of Cartesian nightmare that doesn't know how to deal with that shit anymore.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I completely agree. I'm also out here to rail against Cartesianism and the Enlightenment period, because I think it's interesting. If you were to Google like universalism or perennialism, universalism itself will come up as more as like a theological, because theology has kind of took the understanding of what universals are from Aristotle, and you get Aquinas and Augustine and all these individuals, and then they lay the frameworks from Aristotle and Plato. And so I think there's kind of been a hijacking of what essences are and what substances are, and why do we have them, and do they combine, and where does God fit into all these things? And I feel like even in the Enlightenment period and medieval times and these things, they've done something that's kind of not damaging, but they've made universals into particulars again, and then espoused them as universals. And what I think you're doing with this is you're showing like, no, it's this cross-cultural phenomena of individuals experiencing these universal substances, these whatever these things are, right? Is that?
Yes, I mean, it's just like the hijacking of naturalism. They totally hijacked that, and now you can't even apply the word natural to it, or it only exists with their definition of what natural is. But universal has a precise definition, and if you're going around saying my particular philosophy is universal, but you have to believe X X X X X X X, and you have to do X X, no, now it's not. Now it's not. It's no longer universal. You just wish that it was. You wish that you could have everyone believe in Jesus exactly like your little sect, believes in Jesus. When in reality, right off the get-go, a lot of different people were believing in this stuff in a very different way, from the extremes of the sort of extremes of like Sethian Gnosticism to the kind of Jesus is the universal God incarnate. And yeah, I'm picking on Christianity here because it's kind of the cultural thing in the background in America right now. But it's just we need to reclaim the definition of universal and apply it in this kind of philosophical orientation, and we can reap a lot of benefits. I recently came across Daniel Bork's work. He's written 3 books, and I want to mention it because in each book he focuses on like 1 or 2 psychic phenomena that are utterly cross-cultural. It does not matter where you are. You could be on a Polynesian island somewhere, or in the exalted castles of Germany or whatever, and these same psychic phenomena are going to happen. And usually they coincide with a kind of religious understanding or some kind of spiritual point of view that is going to be able to know how to discuss these things, or maybe fit it into their own little box. Maybe sometimes they don't fit that box at all, and they're just kind of like, how did this happen? And these are also these universals that we can focus on that have that experiential component, because we're not just contemplating and generating like nebulous, layers of abstraction. We're not becoming too Proclean with everything. And it's just like, oh my gosh, you have to really understand all of these very particular things in depth to be able to understand what you're saying. It's bringing it right back to the individual who is navigating life in this day and age. So we're trying to take the best things that were figured out in the ancient world, the best things that I think are being figured out in the modern scientific world, right? And then figure out the things that are happening in our own lives and come up with some kind of realistic analysis, and not necessarily draw rigid conclusions and create new dogmas, but just recognize that some of these fundamentals exist. They've been happening for all time, and no one has really been able to weasel their way around a more spiritual conclusion to these. And so, you would think that it would be more kind of widely adopted, and I guess in the background of a lot of people's minds, it already is. Who really thinks deep down that some other people lack all of these spiritual qualities just because they don't believe what you do? I really think that we kind of all know that this is what is going on, that these things apply to all of us. Because if they didn't apply to all of us, it would be a much trickier philosophical challenge if you had to learn about some particular tradition that's thousands of miles away from you in order to like get into a better place after death. Like if that was the case, we would be living in a much more difficult headspace to try to work through. And some people take on those challenges, can fit them into their sectarian worldview, and then they try to apply them universally, but they don't apply universally. They're not out there like the sun, just simply shining on you. You can make of it what you will, but they shine on you. Out of body experiences happen everywhere. They simply happen. We get to make what we will. But what is one of the fundamentals we can take away there? That you're having an experience outside of the body. And that's nothing, that's nothing to scoff at. The implications are pretty vast.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I love that, especially because I've had my own obvious out-of-body experiences and mystical experiences and things like that. And it's even interesting enough where a lot of times people are like, well, that's just a hallucination, right? Or that wasn't real. You were, on an entheogen, or, maybe it was something you ate that day, or some kind of distress that did this to you. And it's all like, no, actually, I've had them individually, but now I can also tell you I've had them with another individual. And when you have an out-of-body experience or a mystical experience or whatever you want to call it, a divine experience, that's not a hallucination. You can't have a hallucination with another individual and then be able to guess and check and be like, oh, did you experience this? And then you can collaborate scientifically that, okay, we both actually just had the exact same experience at the exact same time. Now that's something else. And it's like that something else is exactly what we're trying to pinpoint. What you're exactly trying to pinpoint with the Universalist is that something else is the universal experience of the divine as it comes down through then whatever it is that your specific particular nervous system is then trying to wrap that universal within. And I think a lot of people get confused by how our nervous systems try to understand the unknown. And it is trying to understand that unknown where then it may be the particular, but it's the unknown that we're trying to know, not the particular clothes that it's garbed in, if that makes sense.
Yes.
And I think that's then when you're now picking out all the different experiences, individual philosophies, individual cultures, that you're pinpointing now the universal experience of that essence of God, or this divine, or whatever we want to talk about, is now being clothed through that culture. Would you say that that's kind of hitting?
Well, it's essentially the idea that no matter what culture you are in, you are going to be grappling with the same fundamentals that apply to all of us. Now, I think there are some cultures that are more equipped to grapple in a better way than others. That's
Yes,
a
yes.
whole yeah.
I like that. Thank you. And the distinction is important, because the distinction is showing that we're not postmodern theorists, where we're saying all cultures have the same kind of, there are better tools to experience things with than others, and we can use that based upon hierarchies of understanding the
Yes.
specifics through our language, right?
Yeah, yeah. It's not to say like, some cultures aren't way better equipped to understand what exactly is going on. And they might also have a lot of techniques that are more tried and true than us. Sort of the modern American culture, we're kind of just in this mundane way going to kind of scientifically prove all of the spiritual fundamentals, which is like, go for it,
Yeah,
keep
yeah,
keep going, like keep
yeah.
going, you do whatever, because right now we're seeing like, oh, the atheists are becoming panpsychists, and or
I
like,
know. Yeah,
and then they're,
yeah.
that, well, since this complex consciousness can arise, it must be embedded in the material in the first place. And it's like, yes, kind of, you're like, I think we're starting to make progress for sure. And then all of these quantum anomalies and whatnot are being applied to the spiritual things. But we've never really we don't have to know how it all works in order for it to work. It is already
Yes,
working. We don't have to know how it works, or even be able to measure that it is working, or when it is working. If you have a dream that predicts something very concrete that then happens the next day, how are you going to measure that? How are you you're not, like, right now we're going to have to develop new tools to figure out how to measure all of this. But I would say that the data points are that those experiences happen, and they occasionally are correct. And that is a data point. It's not saying that we can reproduce it every single day, because I don't think these things can necessarily be as controlled as we want them to be. We want to put
I
them in
agree.
this control room and then say, hey, we have all these variables accounted for, and now we can try to trigger the thing that happens. And then we're sort of confused when it doesn't happen. And it's
Huh.
like, well, it happened in a more natural way. Maybe there wasn't a bunch of people like intending upon the phenomena to happen. It just came, spontaneously, or they were intending on something to happen, but they weren't attaching a definite outcome to all of it. They were open to it not happening in the way
Yeah.
that maybe they wanted it to. So that's important. These things aren't just on call. We can't just text them and they arrive. They deliver food at our door, and we want them to be these easy answered things. But they seem to come to you when you're ready, or when something's going on in your life during very charged emotional experiences. Some people that you meet can bring these phenomena around with them. It's and
Yeah.
so we need to just start discussing these things as they are happening in people's real lived experiences, not, like I said, not with these rigid conclusions about everything, and not just being a gullible yes man and simply accepting everyone's wild stories. That wouldn't
Yeah.
lead us anywhere, either.
Yeah.
But
Which is
we
the
can.
issue with the new age, modern esoteric kind of mindset, where it's like all my experiences are of the goddess Hecate, or some
Right,
bullshit
right.
like that. Right. Right.
Yes. Yeah, there's always you're
I
never
saw a
that's,
leopard, and that was my ayahuasca journey.
yeah, it's like human nature is going to follow humans wherever they are. So people are always going to be proclaiming these fantastic things. But I think there is more room right now than ever to say, well, all right, fantastic things can happen, and we need to start discussing it at a more realistic level. And we're not special. these things didn't just start happening to us. They've been happening for all time. And even in the small, teeny little amount of records that survive, we have an embarrassment of riches.
Mm, yeah, no,
Yes.
that's good. Yeah, no, that's beautiful. And it's something that as the great beast Aleister Crowley said, I think it's really important. He said, "For pure will, unassuaged of purpose, delivered from the lust of result, is every way perfect." And I think that is something that is quite misunderstood and or forgotten. And that's something that you just hit on, and I think that's really important. Is that we're not looking for a conclusion like Tavistock Institute, who is funding a research to get it to figure out what humanity will buy the next best thing, right? That's not what the mystical experience is about. That's not what the universalist or the philosopher is trying to do. We don't have the conclusion of, we're trying to get to universals. It's that like, these things are already all around us. We're just trying to take things away, actually deconstruct enough so we can actually see them, because then as the sun shines upon something that is in falsehood or some just the normal everyday life, we can have truth be unconcealed to us. That is the Greek aletheia, as Parmenides talked about. Aletheia, unconcealedness or disclosure. And I think that's really important because of, we've only said it a few times, but we're trying to figure out the ontological understanding of these things. We're trying to understand truth, correct?
Yes, I mean, what else is there, right? What else is there for the philosopher to try to orient themselves to? And you know, it's not that capital T truth is ever going to be obtained in its most complete form ever in the human experience, you know, um, which I honestly find relieving and liberating. If we could figure it all out in this one little experience, then there probably ain't much to be figured out, you know. But
Yeah.
we can't do it. But we can figure out a number of fundamentals that we can immediately apply to our lives, and we're not special in that. They have been people have been applying them, and they have been working for quite a while. I mean, people have been testifying to prayers being answered on a spectrum from the most symbolic sort of way to the most exact and precise way for all time, right? Prayer is another universal, and prayer kind of implies a telepathic consciousness link to whatever object it is you're praying to or praying for or praying about. You know, the idea is that there's this greater aspect, whether it's of me or of other intelligences out there, that can hear and communicate and correspond. And, you know, this day and age, people are having orb experiences and, you know, seeing lights, different lights in the sky, lights manifesting in their house and so on. And, you know, it would be a mistake to take all of the things that happen that seem new agey and then just like dismiss them with that new age thing, which does happen a lot. Some people I think are too wrapped up in the past, and everything needs to be like looked at through a Neoplatonic lens and
Yeah.
whatnot. But
Yeah.
I don't think you could pick up Proclus and really like get too many answers to your questions. You know, you're not going to.
Yeah.
Iamblichus, even like he might just show you that these profound things happen and give you a lot better language to describe a range of experiences. But that is nothing like the experience itself or your own journey to wrestling with these things and getting maybe a little bit out of your comfort zone and trying to figure these things out. So it's, you know, it's not to say we all need to have some like grandiose, profound experience. I don't think everyone actually should have an out of body experience. Like
I agree.
it can be very terrifying and very world altering. And I would honestly, I would posit that that's why a lot of people don't have them or don't remember them and so on, don't necessarily have lucid dreams as much, because we have protective mechanisms or protective aspects to our consciousness that can kind of save us from some of these terrifying experiences. But if you open yourself up to it and you say, hey, I'm ready to really wrestle with my demons and discover the shadow parts of myself that I want to like tame, you know, there's going to be some forces out there, maybe they're parts of your higher self and so on, whatever name you want to ascribe them. But all of a sudden, the universe can come through with an exact answer and say, okay, you think you're ready? Like, here it is. and you're
Mm.
like, oh, I have to change, I have to be kinder, I have to show up in my life in all of these ways that are usually they're usually principles that are prescribed in religious cultures. We can discover through our own little way that becoming a better person morally is going to be a lot better than having some super exalted esoteric theological abstraction thing, right?
Mm.
That can sometimes be an indulgence or a distraction from some negative pattern of behavior or beliefs and whatnot. So it can build a universalism can build a bridge between all these things. It can build a bridge between the extremes. It can leverage parapsychology and bring it right back down to your own practical life. And I think for some people, this kind of approach isn't going to work, and for others, this is what they've always been looking for. So it's just another way to discuss these things and to try to bring back a more common spiritual understanding into this culture that has tried to disregard it, and now it just finds its way right back around to the same thing.
Nice. Yeah. And so can you give me then some of your and you are a treasure trove. Like I love how you speak and passionate. And so with all these things, you have the passion of Eros as it speaks, as it spreads across. And I think that's that philosopher in you that's truly coming out. And you are, I know, honing your practice, both this embodied practice with the breath work and, remember the breath, and you're out in the world, and you're messing with the actual material world as you're doing it. And I think the beautiful thing about that is that then you're having the true experience and seeing these things in your everyday life, which then you can bring back to your philosophical discourse. And so can you help people understand? Give me some of those examples that you're using in the book. What are your favorite examples of characters in the world that are now having these experiences and then making and building philosophies off of those things? What comes off at the top of your head? I'd love you just to kind of break some of those down.
Well, as far as like an experiential origin point for like religious belief goes, yeah, I mean, one rich area of study that not too many records survive from, but we do have some fascinating records, is like Native American near death experiences. Okay, and there's a number of different scholars who have done some great work here. But like for instance, there was a prophet Neolin that who had a near death experience, or in this particular one, he set out to have a mystical experience. So he actually fasted and did all these purification practices that the culture already knew how to do in order to have these experiences. They already said, oh, you want to do this, here's what you do. And he went out alone and had this. For instance, everyone's like, you have to be initiated by someone. Well, the Native Americans across a lot of tribes might disagree. Like their shaman gave them instructions, but said, here's the thing, go out and see if the spirits talk to you.
That's great.
And
Yes.
so in this particular instance, this kind of it sounds like a portal opening up in the forest after this person's already done like many days of fasting and preparation and dream work. They were doing dream work in order to prepare for this, and suddenly they find themselves in an otherworldly realm, and it's like a city of light. Everybody lives in peace and so on. And then the great spirit shows up in a kind of feminine form at first, and then he has a discussion with what he believes to be the great spirit, and it gives him exact advice. It says, turn away from the ways of the Frenchmen who are coming in and have conquered your land and so on. It even tells this guy to make war against the Brit, raise the hatchet against the
Oh, wow.
British. Right. So there, very specific instructions, some spiritual instructions in there too. And then this was after this person's experience, they came back, and it was so influential to the Great Lakes kind of tribes that people carved them in hieroglyphs on these sticks, and they made a bunch of these sticks, and they sent them out with like the runners and the travelers to all of the a bunch of various tribes along the Great Lakes region, and they would bring the sticks back to give their cultures this story of this person's near-death experience, out-of-body experience. And that influenced their immediate understanding of the soul in those tribes. So that's just one example that's kind of
Beautiful.
like probably people haven't heard of, that can just show you how like that's a culture that would understand the importance of someone having this experience. They have the frameworks, they have the architecture already built out to like bring that value, extract as much value of that experience to the culture. Whereas kind of this day and age, we don't even know if we're ready to tell someone else about our own experience. Right.
Yeah.
So, that can
Yeah.
show you this jarring difference between things there. And I mean, if we want to go to a more familiar territory, Maximus Tyrius, Neoplatonist, tells the story of Aristaeus's out-of-body experience. He left his body and he learned all of these universal things. He learned the different religions of various nations, their political systems, this or that. And then he comes back to, his particular Greek city, and shares this information, and then it alters all of kind of the philosophers in his lecture audience. Maximus tells us it alters their beliefs about that, and now they form a better opinion against this other guy that was trying to say it's something else, right? So there's so many of
That's good.
there's a lot of those examples that they can show us in the old records, that these experiences were taken seriously across a variety of different cultures, and they had ways of extracting the value from that, and then they were able to deal with them as realities, and let them influence their understanding of things. Let them see that, okay, that's a possibility now, right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, I
just like
love
with
that.
it's just like with like lucid dreaming. Some people don't lucid dream until they hear about lucid dreaming, and they're like, oh, I want to do that. And then the opportunity is provided, and you can attract lucid dreams. There's a great technique, super simple, that you can induce lucid dreams with. Spend like a week writing down your dreams. And if you don't have any dreams, just do a little dream journal of a dream you might want to have, whatever, and then
Mm-hmm.
let go of that. But this will start bringing in dreams, and okay, you want to have dreams, here you go. And to induce a lucid dream, you could set an alarm like an hour and a half before you usually wake up, and then set 2 more 30-minute alarms. So you wake up, you go back to sleep, and then 30 minutes later, that alarm is going to hit you. And then boom, 30 minutes later, that alarm is going to hit you. And for whatever reason, for me, this works. It can knock you back and forth into those liminal states, those hypnopompic, hypnagogic states. And then lucid dreaming seems to become more possible there. And you are better able to, like, one. And if you explore the lucid dreaming territory, you will find yourself in new places of consciousness that otherwise are not possible. Like you can feel yourself soaring over, for instance, the other day I had a lucid dream. I was soaring over a grassland. There was beautiful water flowing in the middle of it, and there are mountains on all sides, right? And I was like, oh, great, lucid dream. Let's start flying, because flying is great fun. And I guess I couldn't figure out something more valuable to do at that particular time. But I'm flying around, and as the lucidity increased, I could feel my body asleep on the couch that I was sleeping on, and become more and more and more aware of the setting of the sleeper. But I was also more and more aware of the lucid dream setting, which is a very bizarre place to be in, feeling your body on the couch while your other body, maybe your subtle body or what have you, is going around and doing these things. So that's a pretty cool one to try to explore more, like those liminal states, and even in the sort of sleep paralysis state, playing around there, because bizarre things can happen in the sleep
Yeah.
paralysis state too. And this is
Yeah.
just a way to show you that, like, naturally, very naturally, some profound things can happen. And sure enough, the day after that lucid dream, I found myself, my brother's a fly fisherman. I found
Nice.
myself in between mountains.
Yeah.
There's beautiful water, and it was very similar. It wasn't the exact setting, but it was similar to that kind of dream setting. So, weird shit can happen. You just
Yeah.
have to open up to it a little bit.
Yeah, I know. I think that's fantastic. I think that's amazing, especially because what we're trying to, especially in this day and age where we're realizing that reality is stranger than fiction. I think that's a really important thing because the chaos of the world is showing us that things are more malleable than we can ever imagine. And it is through the understanding of the malleability of reality that then if we don't have the firm foundation that of, I think, these kind of universals, that there are things out there that can help us discover and remember our own I always call it birthright, or what we are. We're not this materialist, this mechanistic kind of just body meat suit with some kind of thinking thing within, and it's separate. That's that Cartesian dualism. But really through this through the call to adventure in the indigenous experience of going into the fields and the forests, or through the ability to begin your lucid dreaming work, where you're doing exactly what kind of Neo did in the Matrix, where you're waking up to the potentiality. And it is in that potentiality where we can find these universal things that we can all always want to do. What do we want to do? You wake up, the first thing you do is you're like looking at yourself in the dream and you're like, oh, wow, okay, I'm here now, but I'm there. So what does that mean for this time space continuum? We have to ask that question. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, what do I want to do? Well, what would it be like to fly? Why does that always come up? That is another universal. Why do we want to fly? Well, it's because of what is gravity? What does it mean to launch ourselves up in this anagogic experience of the divine? This something that the theurgists are always talking about, this flying thing, or the Platonists are talking about with Plato's Phaedrus, when we're flying on the chariot up towards, the Platonic forms, so I can understand the forms, and then I can come back down, right? It's just in that chariot has two horses, that are lower desires and the highest desires that are moving us forward, the rational mind. Or it's the same thing as Merkaba mysticism, where we're flying on the chariot up towards the divine as I'm becoming a higher ascended individual. It's this Ubermenschian type of thing that I think is really important. And from my own experiences is in my own dream realms, which I have had a lot of lucid dreaming experiences. I have also my own level of mystic, where entheogens were a really important part of my own journey. I did explore the DMT spaces a lot, even though I did it in a very more, I don't recommend people to do it the way I did it, because if I was my own solo practitioner and all these things trying to figure out what it meant, I watched the boundaries of realities just dissolve, where all of a sudden my normal dream time, my DMT experiences, and my normal everyday waking consciousness, I was able to peer over those boundaries and walls, kind of like Narnia, kind of like walking through these things. And all of a sudden you could just walk through. It's kind of like that Giordano Bruno image of the man peering through the matrix and seeing the splendors of the universe. And I think that why it's dangerous is because if you haven't practiced fasting, or, done the things that help your embodied consciousness prepare for it, you don't have the signs and symbols and things there to help guide you back into that space. And so I think what you're tapping into is really important for the modern practitioner in the world where you may not trust authoritative individuals, and these books, and this book specifically that you've written is kind of like little breadcrumbs to help individuals on their journey. Because as you're saying, and I think it's really important, is that not everyone is going to have the same experience, but in those experiences, we can all tap into a very similar thing. And it's through all the different examples that you're giving in every chapter that now somebody can double click on that, right? You can't on the book, but you can write that down,
Yes.
that name, that individual, that experience, that culture. And now you can go look it up. And then you can go, okay, this actually means something to me. And now I can further explore that. Is that kind of something that is that on purpose? What do you
Yes.
know what I mean?
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. It's to always showcase the universality of these experiences, and to pick up on the specifics of what we were discussing, like the idea that in a lucid dream state you can start moving more in accord with your thought, and that reality can start reflecting your interiority uh, in this immediate way. That's a profound experience, and now that we can start doing some of this comparative work and we're opening ourselves up to a wide variety of sources. Well, for instance, like the astral body, the subtle, the ethereal body, the second body, as Monroe put it. These experiences are described, like in the outer body realm, as you are able to move at the speed of thought, if you will, or
Yeah.
or as they say in the Corpus Hermeticum, you know, tell your soul that you'd like to travel to India and it will be there as if already being there. So there's no movement at all. And the fact that so many sources can arrive to that idea of the soul's movement is actually more in accord with its thinking, and its state of being. That's profound,
That's
because
profound.
some of us have been there if we haven't had these more exalted experience, we've been there at least in the lucid dreaming. We're able to say, okay, I understand a little bit of what they're talking about. So, and that's why, it would be easy to write off some of these teachers. You're talking about an astral body traveling around to different realms, and so on and so on.
Yeah.
But then when you have a little taste of something like that happening, you're like, oh, this is part of our consciousness. This is a radically visionary layer to our consciousness that, we it can be terrifying to go there because we've pretended for so long that it no longer exists and everything.
Mm.
Um, Whereas if we look back at a lot of these sources, they have a lot of outliers that are telling us how to navigate these spaces. And for instance, in some cultures, let's say ancient Egypt, there was a lot of words and passwords and things you say when you arrive at this place in the underworld. You do
Yeah.
this when you arrive at that place, and I actually think that those particulars can actually work. That
Yeah.
those can actually become tools, because if you believe in them, right? If you believe in them, well, reality reflects our beliefs to some degree or another. So that belief is important, because if you
Yeah.
didn't believe in them, they probably wouldn't actually have any power, there. People cry out to Jesus when they're having a profoundly disturbing experience and they believe, and Jesus or whatever is coming through is able to sweep them away from that experience and kind of fill them with peace, get them out of psychological danger. So it's not like that only started happening when people were believing in Jesus. It was happening, all over the world with a variety of different figures. So,
Yeah.
we're building a better
That's
language. We're building a better language about these things by tapping into the best exponents of these practices in the ancient world, figuring out who's studying it right now, applying it to all of the known parapsychological phenomena, because the parapsychologists apparently aren't doing this, good enough, or else we would be there already, right?
Yeah, yeah. They
So,
separated it out. They're like in their own little box, and the UFO, UAP, and I agree. Yeah,
yeah,
the
when in
magicians.
reality, yes, but all phenomena overlap in a shared reality. So
Yeah.
we could categorize each one of these phenomena separately. They're super useful, like the crisis apparition, for instance. That's a very universal experience. And that one in particular, there's the implications are pretty vast as well. So let's say someone's on their deathbed and they claim to have an apparition arrive of their deceased, a deceased relative. Their mother is saying, we can't wait to see you, and so on. Or an ancestor that they didn't even physically know. It was like great grandfather has come to bring you into the next life or something like this. Or in regular ghost stories, an apparition will show up that resembles a recently deceased person, right? So if we are to credit this with any level of reality, one of the implications is that our soul's kind of subtle body can take the form of our physical body in that
Hmm.
transitional process. Okay. And, that kind of insight there makes reading like Sri Yukteswar's instructions a little bit more profound, where he says astral beings can manifest themselves in any way that they wish. In any way that they wish. Well, if you spontaneously die, you might be continually believing that you are the same body that just died. So
Right.
you're taking on the physicality or the form, the appearance of that physical person. Some people encountered in an NDE will look healthier than they ever looked in physical reality, but they might be appearing that way for your sake, so that you have some familiarity, so that you have some comfort level as you're going on to this new journey. This right here is also universal, right? So that means there's probably a level of reality to it that we can focus on a little bit more, that we can explore, that we can chew on the implications more. And there's so much, there's so much to be learned. This is kind of brand new territory, and I think if we're able to, let's say, like a Monroe Institute is able to induce more of these experiences, we're going to be able to start studying them in a more direct manner too. So this is all to say that we shouldn't be surprised. We shouldn't be surprised when this stuff happens, because it's always been happening. We've just lost that interest and lost that education. A lot of this is this educational issue.
Yeah.
But if I was to bring a group of students in and they kind of want to explore religions, you could almost open them up with the universalist kind of broad overview, and then they can go on from there, depending on what they're interested in. So I know that segued in a lot of different areas.
That's
but
beautiful. No, I love that. That's the vast mind of you, and that's why I like chatting with you, Colin, because it's phenomenal and it all means something. It's all really important. And I think also, like, one of the bedrocks of this experience and why you're bringing the mystical experience, the universalist experience, which can get trapped in abstraction. And I think that's something that is I myself, it can be trapped in the transcendent. And I think that transcendent trapping is a trap, because we need to get back to the embodied experience. And I think that's what you're talking about when we're talking about how, what are these experiences that we're having in the world? And in the world is also like our dreamland. That is real, right? That's what real universalism is talking about. They believe in these things as being just as real as our actual material experience, right?
Well, experientially, when you're there, it is, it's quasi physical, but it is being experienced just as if you are actually there.
Yes.
The fact that is a quality of reality there and here, who's to say that when we leave here, it's like you don't just look back at that as some dream world,
Yes.
because essentially it will likely be, in my personal opinion, like waking up from a dream, when we transition. And I think recognizing reality as more dreamlike right here and now means reality gets to be more dreamlike for you. It gets to be a richer experience for you. Just like if you were to synchronicity, providence. Like
Yeah.
this is another universal as well, being in the right place at the right time. It either someone does something to save your life, or these are high stakes. Synchronicity isn't just like, oh my god, I had a cool scene. It's high stakes shit. Like it
Yeah.
can get you out of, it can prevent you from dying. Like some, I was just thinking about this thing, and then I saw this billboard over there, and I pulled over, and I was like, oh my god, and then boom, car accident, like, or something like that. I mean, you hear a lot of these stories where synchronicity saves lives.
Yeah.
And you might be more capable of noticing and experiencing synchronicities if you credit it with more reality instead of just dismissing it. And I would say that it's a pretty high stakes thing. Like living a life where synchronicity is possible it's so much richer than the
Yeah.
opposite, right?
Yeah.
So
Then
there's a bunch of these categories,
Yeah, I know. I like that a lot. I like that a lot because it's the idea is that I don't want to, coincidence control center is on high right now. And I think we're seeing that we live in such a synchronistic world because of all the crazy shit that's going on at all times. Open up your phone, open up your computer, something crazy and mad is happening. You think about it, you think about a friend, they call you and you're all like, I was just thinking about you, and that's like small stakes stuff. But it gets to the idea of, what I find to be important again, and it's that you're taking something that the particularists, the scientific materialists, And just the normal mundane mind wants to say that those things are abstract concepts that you're talking about, and you're all like, no, we're talking about universal things that everyone is experiencing. And upon those experiences, we can get into the deeper understanding of reality itself. And I think that's really important about what it is, because then reality itself is not something separate from the divine, which people want, like a lot of the reductionists want to do, reductionists on either side of the aisle, but that it's so personally integrated into everything we do that you actually cannot get away from it. And you actually have to build models to get you away from it instead of taking things away, if you know what I'm saying.
Yes. Yes, indeed.
Yeah, nice. And so then what is one of your favorite, did you already tell us, or what is one of your favorite stories in the book that you wrote about that really gives us a great example of the book itself? Like, I want people to go out and read this book, but can you give us a little teaser about if you could give us a nice little story on one of your favorite thinkers, one of your favorite cultures, one of your favorite experiences that you wrote about?
Oh, it's hard.
I know. I just put Colin on the spot right now. Okay. He doesn't know any of these questions. It's coming from the dome.
Yeah. Gosh, I would have to think about it for a little bit. Well, let's say this, in the idea of the dream phenomena, right? In the dream divination. There was one story that Cicero talked about. It's been repeated
Nice.
in some other areas, but I love it because it's so two traveling friends, they go and kind of stay at a hostel, but they're kind of like, one guy's in this little outbuilding, the other guy's in this outbuilding. And one of the guys has this dream where his friend is coming to him in the dream and saying, "Hey, look, I'm dead. The innkeeper is evil. He has my body in the hay cart, and he's going to cart it into the city at this specific time." And the guy, he wakes up. Oh my God, that was crazy. He goes back to sleep. He has the same dream again. So he wakes up. The innkeeper and his friend aren't there. He runs to the city gates, and lo and behold, the innkeeper's there carting in something, and he finds the body, the guy gets arrested, right? Wow. So that's a high stakes situation. You just caught someone murdering your friend, okay? And his form was able to come to you in a dream and express that this thing actually happened. So there's a lot of confirming going on there. And I love that story because it speaks to the kind of high stakes nature of this stuff. And if you were in a culture that was more receptive to these experiences, you might be able to grapple and prevent more high stakes things from happening. I mean, it's like the remote viewers that find missing people, right? That doesn't just stop happening or never was able to happen before. We can continue to do this if we develop it a little bit more. And so there's a lot of stories like that. There was a story, I forget the gentleman's name, but it was sort of, I don't know if it was Empedocles, but someone breaks into the temple and steals the golden statue of the god. And, Empedocles gets this repeated dream of saying, this is the person who did that. This is the person who did it. And finally, he just goes to the temple and says, look, guys, I'm getting this dream. It's saying that this guy's the one that get it. And of course they get him to confess and returns the statue and stuff. So, this happens in people's lives. I had one of my most profound premonitory dreams was I saw my buddy's Jeep getting sucked into a tornado. And I immediately woke up because the dream felt very charged. I immediately woke up, said, "Hey man, had a dream, blah, 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 your Jeep." And he says, "That's crazy because my Jeep was stolen last night."
Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a lot of symbolic elements, like the tornado. It was very chaotic how this happened. And the two people that were stealing his car were living very kleptomaniac, chaotic lives. And they stole it again. They stole it again a few nights later. So it was why did I pick up on that? I have no idea. I have no idea. Yeah. I had a dream. This former classmate who I hadn't thought of in well over a decade, had not even thought of this particular person in over a decade. I lived far away from her at this point. All of a sudden I wake up, I have a dream of a specific angle of my middle school bus stop and of her. So it was just that, two things. I wake up, look at my phone, Facebook message from this exact person of that exact angle of my middle school bus stop. And it was like a picture of me and my other
Wow.
friend making a silly face. And I mean, I was so like I was so clear-minded when I woke up on both of these occasions too. So there was this other quality to it as well, this kind of clairvoyant quality. And so I've had a couple dreams that play out like that. And, you know, I've been very sort of, I guess, you know, it's awesome to discover that this is nothing new, that this has been
Yeah.
going on forever, right? And to learn more about those other experiences. So yeah, it's cool stuff like that. And you know, I get into a lot of mystical experiences as well, like in the Soul of Experience chapter. You know, we talk about like Lady Julian of Norwich has a near-death experience, encounters, you know, a beautiful light, and also encounters like demons and stuff who are trying to prevent her from going through that layer of the veil. And she could either succumb to fear or hold strong to her beliefs. She holds strong to her beliefs, and so she gets to this next place. And there's often these kind of trials, these sort of trials in this next place, you know. And if you if you are able to understand that things might present themselves in order to see how you're going to respond, and if you're able to recognize that you're a spirit, nothing can really hurt you,
Yeah.
you know, you can get through all of those.
Yeah.
You can get through all of those, right? Something will come in and you know, fill you with peace and so on. So, you know, all of this offers it kind of clears the table for bringing all of these experiences, you know, back to the discussion, taking them seriously, because they happen to us still, right? And if we were in a culture that was a little more accepting of this stuff, you know, all of a sudden thousands of more people would come out of the closet of their experiences and be like, yeah, you know, that happened to me too. And you know, you might be surprised like how many people have also seen UFOs, how many people have also seen apparitions,
Yeah.
and they just never told anyone about it because, you know, there's hasn't been this open space for that kind of discussion. But you know, every time I meet a pilot, Virginia Beach, you know, it's like people are always flying out of there. Every time I meet a pilot, I ask them about the UFOs. I was like at this mountain bike park a year and a half ago and met this co-pilot of, I don't know if it's an F-15 or whatever. Like, oh, you ever seen any UFOs? And he looks at his buddy, looks back at me. He's like, yeah, a lot, quite a lot. Like it was around the time when Ryan Graves, that pilot, was also
Yeah.
flying around Virginia Beach, seeing these
Yeah.
things. And, you know, so they encounter this stuff on a regular basis. There's a protocol in place, no talkie about it. You know, this kind
Yeah.
of like,
Yeah. National security does not tell
yeah,
anybody.
yeah. And like I met a nuclear engineer at a Masonic event, you know, quite recently. And oh, nuclear engineer, you're at this esoteric event, like ever see anything over those nuclear sites? And he's like, yes, every single one. And there was a protocol in place for when the orbs show up over the nuclear sites that we enact. And, you know, I'll keep him anonymous here, and he doesn't necessarily care. But he was also on a nuclear carrier at one point with like 15 of the other sailors on the main deck. It's at night, and this luminous white golden orb is deep in the water, and it's flying, moving upward. It breaks the surface of the water without a splash, without a sound, continues moving straight up. And they were all like, oh my God, you know? And he tries to send an email out to his mom to tell about the experience, and the email is blocked. And then he's given a slap on the wrist.
No
So
way. That's
yeah,
fantastic. That's a great story.
so that shows you right there how that control mechanism works and how those experiences, at least in the intelligence military sector, are prevented from getting out. I had to learn that through asking someone face to face, and
Yeah.
he doesn't tell anyone that, you know, he doesn't go around telling people about that.
No.
But
No.
you know, so it's like without that open-mindedness, you don't get you don't get these stories. So it's like, do they really happen? Well, go out and ask some people, and you might be
Yes.
surprised, right?
Yeah, yeah, and you have to be open-minded, which is that key, almost like the word that the ancients would use to enter into different realms of the dead, right? It's kind of very similar of that. It's like you had your own level of study and research and practice and experiences. That is your word, like, right? The last, what is the lost word of Freemasonry? It's almost like that idea of like your own childlike wonder is one of the lost words of Freemasonry. Because of that word, now you are in your life, because that's where you're supposed to bring your esoteric practice, your magical practice into your life, and speak about these things and talk about them and know how to gauge responses, so you're not scaring people, but you can slowly work your way into, and now all of a sudden you're speaking to somebody who has also had a crazy experience. And due to your experiences, this word, which may be trapped within the center of your own heart, that now you can elicit a response, and you're getting reality speaking through this guy through his experience. And upon doing so, he can tell you that he is, yes, I have experienced some crazy shit. And then you are like, okay, great, I knew it. But now he's like, I can't tell the public who don't have that key to be able to unlock that. And because not everybody's going to believe him, he doesn't want to be seen as crazy. He doesn't want to get in trouble by his own intelligence agencies or whatever it is. And so I find that to be, I don't know what that is. I don't know if that's an allegory. I don't know if that's a metaphor or but there's something fascinating with that, because these keys aren't trapped within traditions. They're not trapped within lodges. It is the wonder, that philosophical wonder, that love of wisdom, the philosophia, I think, that can be, the ability to question what is our nature and what are we doing in this ocean of chaos, that can truly unlock the initiatory experience of this something else that we're all a part of. If you know what I'm saying.
Yes. Yeah, we have to meet these things halfway sometimes. I think, I do think that we need to understand that they can happen spontaneously, also, but for like a healthy practice and, developing your own kind of conversation with these phenomena and whatnot, you do have to meet it halfway. And, like I don't think terrible people are able to encounter these kind of things, at least not in a positive way. So like, being physically healthy, like being psychologically healthy, and being a good person. I mean, these are so basic things, but they're hard to do. It's hard to do, man. It's hard to like, and this is why we want to get lost in nebulous abstraction all the time, because it's hard to just be kind to someone who's annoying you. It's hard to like, it's hard to like be angry and just prevent yourself from doing something really stupid with that anger, and letting 25 minutes pass, getting back to the breath, and then saying, wow, I don't know who was just inhabiting my body back then, but that shit was crazy. Let's move on. Right. That's high stakes stuff, man. That's as high stakes as it gets. That's how you keep healthy relationships, so we can bring it back to the most practical things of how you live and behave and take care of yourself and show up in the world. And that's going to have this domino effect into all of these, different categories. Whereas like we could spend all of our time on very specific and specialized things, and then lose sight of that practical reality that our sources were always recommending,
Yeah, I do know. Specialization is for insects. I think Buckminster Fuller said that, and I think that's really important for us all to know. This is great. Thank you, Colin. The last question is going to be, if I were somebody out in the world who, is dabbling or wanting to seek or trying to understand, or just was all like, what is it about your book that, what is it about this book that you want people to maybe just know from the author's voice himself? Here it is. Can you tell me, what do you want people to know about your book? What is it about? What, not about the book itself, but
it should be license to compare religions again. All right. License to look at the origins of all the different spectrum of religious and spiritual beliefs as experiential. And it should open you up to the idea that you too participate in all of this grand reality that all of these sources are discussing, you are fundamental to that, and that you cannot be counted out of that. It doesn't matter what the dogmatists say. Reality, for one reason or another, has brought you into existence, and like that is your particular thing, you know, your particular sort of superpower that you can bring to the world. And I understand that, you know, it's like, yeah, a lot of people are living lives that they really don't want to live, and kinds of lives that they don't want to happen. People have certain tragedies, and like I can't speak to all of those mysteries there, but you know, the idea is to give people the theoretical architecture to better understand the universality of religious experience across this wide array of categories, and you know, apply it back to your daily life, and you know, to recognize, hey, you're not alone. People have been wrestling with this stuff forever, and it's going to continue. And I don't care what these so-called sophisticated institutions tell you, like bizarre shit is going to continue to happen to human beings, and we need to get ahead of it. Like we need to get ahead of these things so that we're not just brought some new dogmatic approach out of all of
Yes.
this. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
That's good. No, I love that. I love that. Colin, tell everybody, this is fantastic. Everyone go out, buy this book, The Universalist. Yeah, I'll put the link in the description. It's fantastic. This is the soft cover. I like the white version. You can get hardcover. It's in both black and white, correct?
yes.
Yeah, it's fantastic. So please go out and support Colin. Colin, tell them where they can find you and American Esoteric and this fantastic book.
Yes, I host the American Esoteric YouTube channel, American Esoteric. You'll find all the links there. I've got a Substack. There's also a Shopify link there as well. If you want a signed copy, I'll ship it to you directly with a couple custom bookmarks, you know, all that good stuff. So yeah, you can find me on there. Check out my Patreon. I've got some exclusive stuff going on there, more and more. And yeah, I'll be doing this stuff until the next journey calls.
Fantastic. We are all grateful to have you. I'm grateful you came on and conversed with me. I love it every time we get to chat. It's like chatting with an old friend, and I think that's how these conversations can be so authentic, and also dig deep into that rabbit hole. Yeah, so thank you. I think everyone out there, make sure again, if you haven't already subscribed, liked, and shared to American Esoteric, please do. He's doing God's work in an amazing way, and his video essays are fantastic. I see all the time when I'm going through X, I don't know if he knows this, but people are putting some of his documentary video essays as some of the top 5 or 10 best things to look at on and to watch on YouTube. And I think that really gives credence to the work that Colin is doing. And so please go over there. Head over to MagusintheMedia. We're here right now. Subscribe, like, and share. I'm bringing you all of the things that I find fascinating and interesting that help bring back myth, magic, and meaning into this world. And somebody once said, Thoreau being that one, we may live lives of quiet desperation, but through the universal, through the strange, the weird, and the things that are unexplainable, we can actually find ways to explain them in the most magical, meaningful ways that give our lives meaning. And then we don't have to despair or be anxious about the unknown. We can truly walk the path, the call to adventure, and really live an embodied life, because it's not something out there. Technically, it's in here, out there, all at the same time. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you, Colin. You're going to come back. We're going to continue doing it until I can no longer take a breath and we change form. Everybody, thank you, and have a wonderful evening and a good night.